Hope you're doing okay. And just give me the Zoom nod if you're okay. It's very hard, isn't it? Just Zoom me. It's quite a funny sight, actually. No offense. But it is really lovely to be here. My wife always says that the most precious thing that you can give someone is your time. And so you've given us an hour of your time tonight. So we're incredibly grateful. Obviously, before the pandemic, Ireland, and particularly Northern Ireland, was one of the my favourite places to preach, and I've been over many times, and absolutely love your hospitality. I always come back about 2 stone heavier, though, so I've learned to diet now before I go, because people's hospitality is just so incredible, and so I'm looking forward to coming back, hopefully soon. So I'm just going to really try and share a little bit of my heart for Kintsugi Hope, and then Sara is going to talk a little bit as well around some of the stuff that she's been doing in Northern Ireland, which has been just fantastic. Now, people often say to me, what on earth does the word kintsugi mean? So kintsugi is a Japanese word, and it means golden joinery. So basically, if we get a bowl and we break it, a bit like this bowl, is we tend to mend it with super glue. And the whole idea of super glue is you hide the cracks, right? You pretend it's not broken. Well, what they do in Japan is they put a gold powder in the glue. So instead of hiding the cracks, they make a feature of the cracks. Arguably, the object becomes more beautiful for being broken. It certainly becomes more unique. There isn't a bowl like that on planet Earth. I'm a firm believer that beauty comes out of brokenness, that our scars are not there to be ashamed of. Our scars make us who they are. They're part of our story. Jesus, even in his resurrected body, had scars. And so that's what kintsugi means. And our history it's just really a couple of years ago, I was running quite a large charity, and in that charity, I saw some of the challenges that people, particularly in the inner city areas in London, but further afield, were having with mental health. But it was a charity I started and founded and ran for 22 years, and I felt like God told me to let it go. And I'm like, I'm a founder. We don't let go. And it was like, I'm breaking your heart for something else. And the 2 areas I felt like God was breaking my heart for was social isolation and mental health. And I'm really passionate about the local church and how the local church can serve in these 2 areas. And people are like, why are you so passionate about the local church? When I say, well, number one is we're in every community across the country. We have the best infrastructure there is. We are there for our long haul. We will outlast politicians. I often said that to a politician who you may have heard of. He has blonde hair and he doesn't comb it very often. And I said, the fact is we exist for our non-members. And the other thing is that we believe in an internal transformation when someone really knows that they're loved and cared for. I'd never dreamt that the issues around mental and emotional health would be so needed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I've been looking at some of the research, and, the United Nations recently acknowledged that COVID-19 is causing wide psychological distress. And they also revealed that someone dies by suicide every 40 seconds. And yet governments spend less than 1% of their budgets on mental health care. And that the lockdowns relating to COVID-19 will cause a tsunami of new mental health challenges. And for a lot of people, I think it's like when the lockdowns are on, the adrenaline's going high, isn't it? And as the lockdown is eased, that's when some of these issues do come out. It's a bit like when you go to war. There were more soldiers that died, returning veterans from Afghanistan that actually died in Afghanistan. And that is part of the challenge. I keep saying to people this: there will be no vaccine available for the effects of COVID-19 on mental health and poverty. We need to grapple with these issues now. Some of the stats are staggering, and we need to do more to help people. One of the things I feel really passionate about is that as the church, we are not called to be medical experts, but we are called to love. And so I always describe it like this: if you got someone who's got cancer, or someone who's got cancer, they will go to hospital and they will get chemo and radiotherapy. And but to get through a cancer journey, you need love, community, and support, right? And it's exactly the same with mental health. is that we cannot do what mental health professionals can do, and we shouldn't try really. But we can offer love, community, and support. And there is so much. We have doctors, GPs, psychologists, nurses saying to us, you know what, medicine alone is not going to help this person, because actually one of their key issues is loneliness. One of their key issues is their lifestyle habits, and actually they need people around them. And so as I've been thinking about transformation, I came across this diagram from CWR. You may have seen this before, which actually says to see real transformation, we need to realize that we are more interlinked, that our physical, spiritual, thinking and behavioral and our emotions are all interlinked. And to really see transformation, we need to work in all these different areas and realize there's a massive relationship between the two. So 2018, me and my wife, we started dreaming about a new charity. And they say that vision is the art of seeing the invisible that produces passion and energy, don't they? That's why Martin Luther King stood up in Washington. He never said, I want you to read my 5-year business plan. He also never said, I've got a complaint to make and I want you all to listen. And we're good at complaining sometimes, aren't we? What did he say? He said, I've got a dream. I've got a dream of justice and equality. And he rallied people around the dream. And so as we started to pray and seek God, we had this dream that we'd love to see a world where emotional and mental health is understood and accepted, with safe and supported communities for everyone to grow and flourish. And you know what? This just wasn't a load of clever words we stuck on the screen. I've realized from my own personal journey with emotional mental health that once I felt understood and accepted, and I felt safe, and I think that word safe is actually really important at the moment as we come out of a pandemic. Safe and supported, we will grow and flourish. I said to God, the last thing I want to do, to be honest, is to run another charity, because I never want to fundraise ever again in my life. And I really felt God say, don't think charity, think movement. And so for a year, I actually studied movements. I looked at parkrun. I don't know if you guys have parkrun. And before COVID, you know, hundreds of thousands of people running in parks across our country, different cultures, different ages, different abilities. They belong, but they don't always have to fit in. Rock choir, you know, choir starting in community centres, in schools. They hire Wembley Arena now. And do concerts, different cultures, different ages, different abilities. You belong, but you don't have to fit in. And I was like, could we create something which was like that? I joined Weight Watchers. After COVID, I need to join Weight Watchers again. And, but, you know, amazing. In the grassroots of community, so non-judgmental, so kind in some of the stuff that they did. You belong, but you don't have to fit in. And then we looked at Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a 12-week program that's gone around the world. And what we decided to do is, me and my wife, Diane, is we decided to write a 12-week program, not about alcohol addiction, but around well-being. And we wrote on these different 12 topics, and that you can see on your screen coming up there. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to write it in learning styles. So actually, we all learn really, really differently. Here are some of the learning styles that we use. Pray it, watch it, use videos, hear it is discussion, create it for those of you who are creative, not like me, do it, discuss it, think it. And so what we wanted to get away from is often the one size fits all approach, where we just get a manual and we apply it to every community that we work in. Now, the experts in understanding the issues in Northern Ireland are definitely not me. As much as I love it and as much as I've visited, the experts are you. The people that live there, the people that are brushing on shoulders with their neighbours all the time, the people that are loving and serving their churches. And so we wanted to write something where people could go, oh, that bit's really appropriate for our community, and that bit's really appropriate. And so for each week, people tend to choose the bits they think are the most relevant. And so we really want to try and achieve through the Kintsugi groups 3 things. One is we want to create self-management tools where people might go, you know, I've got anxiety. It may not be severe enough to, you know, get on medication and do all the things that may be necessary to help. But I've learned some stuff in the Kintsugi groups that's really helped me. And I feel like I can apply them to my lives. And also, you know, things like anger. Anger is a really interesting one, I think. I've never heard a decent sermon on anger that isn't Jesus and the Money Changers. I don't know about you. It's an emotion we all feel. Anger is an emotional response to pain. It tells you something's wrong. And yet we don't often talk about it. You know, there are techniques to realize that anger is telling us something. You know, I often talk about get curious about why are you feeling the way that you're feeling. And then we really wanted people to be signposted to extra help if they need it. And that was really our heart. We wanted to be not output based, where we're driven by numbers, but outcome based, where we're driven by trying to see transformation. And so I often say to my team, these are the things I'd love everyone that's to do with Kintsugi Hope to experience. And they're simply this, is that I'd love everyone who comes to our groups to know there is safety and support where there is no shame and embarrassment in struggling, that they would see an increase in self-worth and confidence and well-being, that they would have a deeper understanding of the reality of God's love for them, and they'd have clear pathways to receive additional support if they needed. And you notice the third outcome there about understanding the reality of God's love for them. I think that's why I'm not loaded, because it's harder to get funding for those sort of things, isn't it? And but it's so important to us that people really understand where we're coming from. So what we do is we ask churches, we train churches to deliver this in their community. It's all about working with the local church, serving the local church. And we train people online, takes about 4 hours, I think. And we check safeguarding policies, and people apply for our website. And once they've gone through the training, then they can start going into their communities. And just some of the relationships, some of the stuff that's happened is incredible. I'm just going to show you a little video now. It's only 60 seconds. This is our little Kintsugi advert that we show in communities to show people what they might be coming to. Check this out.
Life can feel like a game of Tetris. No matter what you do, sometimes the blocks don't line up. Days spent trying to keep all the plates spinning, but sometimes it's just one plate too many. Or perhaps you're giving out of an empty cup. Some of us invest in our physical well-being. Why not invest in your mental and emotional well-being? We can all feel broken, but we can all discover treasure in life scars. Join a Kintsugi Hope Wellbeing Group.
Brilliant. So this was the situation. We were running these wellbeing groups before lockdown in these different areas. And the dots show where the churches that we were partnering with and working with in February. And it was incredible, actually. A lot of churches run it in their home groups, and they invite neighbours. And it breathes new life into the home groups. Most of them have been running on Zoom, obviously, over this period. Some people were like, some churches were like, well, we have a homeless ministry and we'd really love to reach out to the homeless. So some of them started in homeless shelters, which was fascinating. They've been running in schools. They've been running amongst the police force. You know, the police force in England, I think they're running 2 groups now, just given the trauma that some of the police have seen. We've had people running it in Christian charities. We've had people running it at the YMCA. We've had people running it for people that are involved in foster care. We had a lovely story of a lady who was running it for mums who've lost their kids to foster care. And so what basically happens with these mums is they've been told that they're not to be a fit mum anymore. And one of them, that it was all on Zoom. And I remember this one mum, she used to sit there in the Kintsugi Wellbeing Group and she had the light off. You could just make out that she was there. And but you couldn't see her face. Week 4 in the wellbeing program is on shame. It's all about stepping out of your story, about understanding what shame is and how shame is different to guilt. Guilt is I've done something wrong. Shame is I feel like I am wrong. And as we talked about owning your story and stepping out of shame, week 5 she had the light on and you could see her face for the first time. And I actually think, you know, you might say, well, that's a very simple story, Patrick. I think that's massive. And I think that's what Jesus does. He allows people to step out of shame. And so it just started to spread, and we were just really excited. But then since lockdown, this is what's happened. Suddenly, it's gone everywhere. And we're starting to see a real movement starting to apply. In fact, we reckon that every week at the moment, there's about 154 Kintsugi Wellbeing Groups, just under 3,000 people. And what's really exciting me is a third of the people that are coming have no relationship with the church that's setting it up. And so it's been a bit of a mixed bag, you know, and people have been getting to know each other. And it's just been fantastic. There's another really lovely story on, there's a week on perfectionism on, I think it's week 6 or week 7. And it was the leader of the YMCA was doing it with his staff team. And the people in the YMCA who work for the YMCA, half of them are Christians, half of them are non-Christians. And it fascinated me that they got to the week on perfectionism and all the non-Christians said to the Christians, do you know what? We thought you lot were a bunch of do-gooders. You know, you're just better than the rest of us. But for the last 6 weeks, you've just talked about your frailties and your vulnerabilities. You have changed the view of Christianity for us. And they just had this beautiful chat about the gospel. And people say to me often, do you preach at them? And I have to be really clear when I say this, so please hear my heart. I don't think there's anything more loving than you can do than to tell someone about the love of Jesus. I honestly don't. My issue is how. And I think the answer's in stories. I think that's what Jesus did. And so sometimes I don't rush to do it. I want people to really know that I'm genuine. And, and for a lot of people, they belong before they believe. But like the AA, we pray at the start of the Kintsugi groups. When it comes to issues around anxiety, I remember in my group, they were like, how does prayer actually work when you pray about something you're anxious about? My neighbor came to our group. She's not a Christian. Keep my mouth down in case you can hear me. And but she basically, we got to the week on forgiveness, and this was fascinating. She went, "You Christians, you have to forgive everyone, don't you? How does that work then?" And she looked at me at that point. And so at that point, I looked at my wife, being a really good, solid Christian leader that I am, and went, why don't you take that one? That would be great. And we had this amazing conversation about redemption and forgiveness, because her thing was like, how do you forgive someone who isn't sorry? My neighbor then said, we got to 12 weeks, and she was like, what's happening next week? And I was like, well, to be honest, this is we're part of a home group. So next week we're doing Bible study again. And she goes, what's that then? I'm going, well, we're studying this guy called Jonah. I don't know if you ever tried describing Jonah to a non-Christian. It's not the easiest story in the world to have chosen, to be fair. And I started to try to describe it. And she was, in the end, she was like, stop. I don't care. I love this group. I'll be there every single week. And just before lockdown, she was just about to start to come to church. Last week, I got an email from a church in Bury St Edmunds saying that, again, they had a lady who came to faith during her group, and 2 weeks ago, she got baptized, and she said that Kintsugi was a massive part of her journey. And so we really do. We really believe in getting alongside our communities, loving and caring for people. And that's our heart. So what I'll do is I will finish off. I just want to share this Bible verse. Oh, sorry. This is the evaluations. I should have showed you this. Everyone loves evaluations. So it shows the difference of people's well-being. I have 1,000 evaluation sheets in my office. And it just is so encouraging how well people are doing and how needed this is as well. And but this is what I really wanted to share is 2 Corinthians 4 verse 7 to 8. It says this, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that your all surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. And, the fascinating thing about these jars of clay, for those of you know a bit about the context of this, is these jars were made to be fragile. They were made to be really thin, to crack in the kiln. Why? So the light can get out, so it can reveal more of God. And I really firmly believe that beauty comes from brokenness. And I think it's really, really important for us to understand that. I said to God, I'll be really honest with you. I've written a book called Honesty Over Silence, so I have to be honest. If we describe a revival, and if it's going to be some massive meeting somewhere in America, nothing against Americans, in a warehouse, and Christian TV are going to come and they're going to beam it all around the world, and we're going to call it revival, I think I might just quit. But you know what? If we could just see a move of God in small groups, in prisons, in hospitals, in homeless shelters, in brothels, in people's home, through their computer screens, or whatever other way it takes, in pubs and coffee shops, in church youth groups, in schools and universities, in small groups, not led by the great and the good, but maybe just by the fragile and the humble and the people that just want to bring glory to God, then I'm totally and utterly up for that. This last video is made not by me, it was made by a church in Bristol. They sent it to me and they said, we've made you this, and we use it in our church to tell people about Kintsugi. And I'll finish with this.
You know, life
Patrick, you've muted your sound.
Power in this is when people start to think, oh, I'm not on my own. I'm not alone. There's other people that feel like I do.
Kintsugi is a Japanese art form for repairing broken crockery.
They actually make a feature of the breaks and infill them with gold.
The whole thing is made more beautiful and more meaningful because of its brokenness.
Being honest isn't weak, it's strength, it's courage.
It really helped me just as a starting point to sort of discover a lot of these issues at a deeper level.
It's about getting to know yourself, really, rather than living by other people's values.
Kintsugi Hope allowed me to be welcomed into a group of people where I could be honest with myself in front of them and where there was no judgment.
It sheds light on the way you're feeling. It sheds light on why you are the way you are. And once you receive some of that light, you see more light at the end of the tunnel. It's a journey to healing.
Thank you so much for listening to me, and I want to be really clear. I've listened to presentations like this a lot of my Christian life, and sometimes I feel like it can be a bit like, da-da, look at us, aren't we great? I really want to say that we are a tiny piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and we're quite happy to be like that. And actually, it's about working with each other. I think is actually important. We're not the be all and end all. In some ways, we're a small little movement that seems to be sort of taken off in the grassroots. And there are lots of other people, and I'm sure there are in Northern Ireland, that are just doing equally brilliant stuff and amazing. I'm going to hand over to Sara. If you are interested in any of our resources, I've literally just written this book called Bouncing Forwards. This is my 6th book, Notes on Resilience, Courage and Change. And the reason I wrote it is I actually started it in January last year before COVID hit, is I wanted to write a book on resilience, because resilience by definition is thriving in the midst of adversity. So you can imagine how I felt when COVID hit and suddenly I'm writing a book about thriving in the midst of adversity. I nearly stopped doing it. And my wife was like, no, for a time such as this, you need to write it. And so I persevered. And really the bouncing forward thing is I don't want to bounce back. You know, everyone talks about, at the moment on the news, will the economy bounce back? Will we bounce back? Will church bounce back? Will anyone come back? And actually newer research says that resilience is less about bouncing back and more about bouncing forwards, because we've been changed, right? We've been changed by what we've been through. Our communities have been changed. Why would we go back to our pre-trauma self that knew less, that understood less? And so I think it's really, really important that at the moment we don't think about bouncing back, we think about bouncing forwards. What is God saying? How do we move forwards? And so that's what the heart of this book is. And if you want it, I'll send it to you, you can sign it for you, and I'll put where you can get it in the chat. If you get it from Amazon, we see virtually no money at all, but if you get it from us, then the money can go back into the charity. But yeah, to think about that. Thank you so much for listening and being so gracious. I'll hand over to Sara. Thanks, Sara.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for connecting tonight. As Patrick has already said, your time is so precious. And I'm aware if, like me, you have already spent a long time on screen today for your work, you're probably thinking, I don't want to be connecting again. So I will try and make this as informative and as helpful as I possibly can. I've actually spotted on screen, I think I have a matching cushion from somebody, Annette McGrath. I think we have the same cushion. Great taste. It's amazing what you can spot on Zoom, isn't it? That's my magpie spotlight, you know, something's going on, I get easily distracted. But my journey with Kintsugi started probably about a year ago, actually, just more than a year ago. And my husband was listening to something that Patrick was doing online. And I just happened to be in the room at the time. Could have been just one of those things, or maybe it was a bit of a God thing. I believe it was God. I'm someone who has been very passionate all of my life about wanting the church to actually be responsive to what is going on in people's lives, and actually tackling some of those big issues that at times we want to shy away from, rather than get our sleeves rolled up and get in there and get alongside people. And Patrick shared a little of his story and also a little of the heart that he's just shared with you about Kintsugi Hope. And I just said to my husband at the time, my husband's a pastor, and I was like, that's exactly what we need. And if we didn't need it before this pandemic, we were just at the start of the pandemic, we're definitely going to need it afterwards. So I went on the journey. I got signed up, we became a partner church, and then I got went through all the different training elements and did all of that, and was ready to start my first group in September, which I hoped at the time was going to be in person, because I'm not 100% confident with the whole technology thing, and I was like, oh, this is not going to work, this is going to be a disaster. But technology was the only option, and virtual was the only option. And so at first I invited people to come, and I also asked a few people who I knew would give very honest feedback. And they came to the group, and we went on the journey for the first 12 weeks. And I probably learned just as much as the people who were in that group. Some of them were from church, some of them were not from church. The youngest person in that group at the time was 24. The oldest person in that group at the time was 76. So we had a massive age range, and actually none of it mattered, because they came on screen and they worked through the different topics, and we went on a journey together. Since then, I have ran 3 other groups. Some of them have been in person. One of them has just completed last week online as well. And each of them have been so very different, but so transformative. The most recent one, there was more non-Christians than Christians who connected into that. And they connected, they found the group on social media after we shared it, they connected in, and they were so grateful to have something that they could sign up for. I was on a call yesterday just about mental health within from a Christian context. It was with EA, and the mental health commissioner was on at that time, Siobhan O'Neill, and she was talking about some of the stuff that is going on at government level, because they have recognised there has to be change in Northern Ireland. And one of the things that she highlighted was actually even the funding lack here for mental health provision. We have 20% less than places in England and Wales, but yet we have higher suicide rates and higher rates of mental illness. It's something the government have recognised, but as the church, you and I don't believe, get to diminish our responsibility. It could be very easy to say, this is over to someone else, they have to do this. But I believe that the church can and should respond to this current gap. At the minute, there's there's a huge need for demand. Even just last week, we were on a call, all of the group leaders, and Patrick and Diane had got a GP on the call, and he was sort of saying the reality is, unless someone is in crisis mode, and crisis mode is literally suicidal, ready to jump off a bridge, we have very limited resources available to help someone. You and I get to be that help. As Patrick has already said, there is definite need for GPs, for psychologists and psychiatrists and counsellors and trained professionals, but there's also the gap that we can fill, and we can actually help people in those early stages. One of the things that I love about the groups is we talk about giving people a toolkit, and this has become their toolkit. So this is a well-being journey. It's a manual that they get, and inside, it's very hard to do this on screen, but they get to keep this, and it's little tools that they work through. So we work through this, and it gives them all, and they get to keep this, and they refer back to it. And one of the guys in the most recent group, we were on, so week one is honesty, week 2 is anxiety, and he had talked about his experience with anxiety and what that felt like to him. And then in and around sort of week 6, when we came on, we were just kind of catching up in those first five minutes. And he was just chatting, and he said, "Here, I have to tell you something. And I was like, "What's up, John?" And he said, "Wait to hear what happened this week." And he told a story about how someone in work was just talking about how they were feeling completely overwhelmed. And he shared with this person about ways to deal with anxiety and taking a helicopter view and working through some of the stuff. And he said, "Sara, I didn't actually realize that had gone into my head, and I had been applying those techniques until I was able to help someone else." So it's not even just about the people within the group, it's also then the learning that's applied to other people. The groups, in my groups, the smaller group consisted of 6 people. The largest I have had on screen, it is easier to hold more people on screen because you can split up into smaller groups, is 18, was in the most recent sort of online group. And they work online and they work in person. Some people actually said online they felt more comfortable because they were in their own space already. And so the boundaries that maybe would have happened, meeting new people and that sort of stuff, weren't there. They were comfortable and they were relaxed. The big thing for me is Kintsugi Hope Wellbeing Groups offer a place for people to just feel like they belong. COVID has changed all of our worlds, and there has been a definite increase in isolation and loneliness, and people have been able to just jump on screen and make friends. The 2 groups that have finished now actually have regular meetups, and we have a Kintsugi Hope group event for everybody who's taken part planned for the end of June, where they're going to come and they're going to make their own bowls, and all of the different groups then are going to be able to meet each other who've been on that journey. So there's lots of ways that we can kind of keep the connection going. But what I would tell you is, from a personal point of view, it felt like it was too much, felt like it might be a little bit overwhelming. And like, I'm not going to be equipped to be able to host the groups. I'm not a professional. I'm not trained. I can't do all of this stuff. And the reality is, God just said, if you're available, I will use you. And that's what I have found in my own personal journey. A lot of the times I'm like, Lord, what am I doing here? Like, even right now, I'm thinking, what am I doing here talking to these people about these groups? But God just needs our availability. And if we're willing to show up, Kintsugi make it so easy for you to do the training. It is able to be personalized as well. There is stuff that is there, and some of it works online, some of it works better in person, and you get to gauge it based on your own group and how you might think it would work. There is also youth groups, and there's also student groups. So that isn't just for adults. Adult groups are 12 weeks, and then the student and the youth groups are 6 weeks, and they have slightly lesser content in them that can be adapted. Patrick showed you a little bit of the survey. So the guests who connect in, they do a survey right at the beginning, sort of to ask them what their expectation is as a group, what they would like to achieve and that sort of stuff. And then we check in with them on week 7, and then we check in with them right at the end. By the end of week 12, 100% of the people, now not everybody completes the surveys, but 100% of the people who do complete it had said that they reported an increase of self-worth and self-confidence. 98% of those who completed their submissions said that they had learned tools and strategies of how to cope with feeling overwhelmed. And 25%, a quarter of all participants, are not members of the host church and have been invited just because of community. The reason that I personally started these groups was because I realised that there was needs within our community. Our church is based in Cardiff. We knew that there was needs. We knew that there was stuff that we needed to do to engage with our community and make sure that they knew that we were there to help them in whatever way we could. And in doing that, what we have also identified through very honest feedback and asking some difficult questions is that this church has not always been welcoming. The church has not always been a safe place for people who have experienced some mental health problems or even just some problems. They felt like the church wasn't a place to reach out for support. And even some people within a church have said that they have shied away from talking about things like depression or mental breakdown because they believed that there was a stigma. So I'm not telling you that any of this stuff is easy, but I'm telling you that it is worth it. And it's worth it because I have seen personally the change. One lady was in my first group. She's been a Christian for over 40 years of her life, and she shared stories that she had never spoken about before in that group, and then has gone on to share them again with other people. That you can't make that happen. That's a God thing. And it is because I believe the material is written with a heart and a humility to just really connect with people and help them know that they are loved more than anything else. So what I would say is, don't be put off by going, mental health is overwhelming. I don't know where to start. How can we possibly engage with people? This is so complex and it's so complicated. Because the reality is life is complex and life is complicated. And people don't need you to give them answers. They just need you to be there with them. And most of the time in the group, as a leader, I do very little talking. I listen. I let the group talk to each other and they learn from each other as they share stories and really, really build hope. So I am very excited about what is going on in Northern Ireland. We hosted a group meeting online in March. And from there, we have seen a massive increase in engagement and lots of interest, with a lot of people talking about starting in September. There's a few churches going on a training program at the minute. And my vision is in line with Patrick's definitely, is that we will be a region that champions hope for people through Kintsugi, and that people will genuinely know that they are welcome in our churches, that they're welcome in our community groups and our food banks and our homeless shelters in whatever capacity, and that we'll come alongside them and journey with them. So I am here as a local person who is very passionate about this stuff. So if I can help you in any way, then please just get in touch. But there's probably nothing that Tim doesn't already know already, because I've spent some time talking with him, and I know he has exciting plans of how you guys might be able to partner with us on a larger scale too. But what I would say is, if you're willing, jump in, get involved, because you will experience massive personal transformation, never mind watching how others transform too. And the last thing, I'm going to stop because I don't want to take any more time. I want to leave time for questions. This is my favorite story, okay? So I have to share it with you. So my very first group, I invited a friend. Now, this is one of my very honest friends who would tell me, like, this is stupid, don't do this, this is a waste of time. And her journey, she came to Faith 3 Alpha, but she's had a real journey. She came from a drug background and abusive family and all sorts of stuff, but real transformation as far as God's concerned. But she has a lot of unsafe friends and still connects regularly with them, shares the gospel with them in so many different ways. After Kintsugi Hope, she said, I've got these 3 people. These are the names, Sara, and we're going to begin to pray, and we're going to believe that they will connect to a Kintsugi Hope group. she has signed up to do the training. She hasn't got to do it yet because she was like, if I do it, then maybe they'll connect into my group. And I was like, okay, but we'll pray. So in the most recent group, 2 of those friends connected. They would never set foot in a church. They would never talk openly. And actually, as a pastor's wife, they had an opinion on who they thought I would be. There was another pastor's wife from a different church on this Consigia Hope group. And the really interesting thing is that they went on the journey. They really enjoyed the group. The guy that I mentioned about sharing how the anxiety thing worked was that friend who is telling others about these tools. And we have a coffee set up arranged for the first, so coffee shop is open on Monday. So next Saturday, those 2 people who would not speak to me or come to church are meeting for coffee with any other girl who they still don't know is a pastor's wife. And they have had a complete mind shift of who church are, what church is about, and the people associated with church. You can't make that up. So it's all about connection. That's my stories. Okay, Tim, over to you.